All right, so we are live, everyone. So my name is Jesse. I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms and homes around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. We know it's been weird times. All of you are stuck at home, but we really appreciate you tuning in, especially as we continue our epic series with the Toronto Zoo. They just can't stop. I mean, I think we've covered every topic that you can cover at the Toronto Zoo. We've got 3 more coming this week. And I'm really excited today to highlight the fact that we are doing this on behalf of World Oceans Week. It's also Canadian Rivers Day. So it's a whole bunch of cool water stuff all melded together. But all week long, 20+ programs on World Oceans Week, starting yesterday on World Oceans Day, which is June 8th. You can check out some of our awesome programs on our YouTube channel from then too, and we encourage you to do so. So before we dive in, some quick housekeeping with the Toronto Zoo. We're out in a really beautiful location, so I hope you're as excited as I am. We are using the Slido app again. So Slido, I'll link this in the chat bar. Slido is a place you can share questions, upvote your favorites, and take part in some polls today. So we actually do have a series of polls today. Usually it's just me coming up with a quiz. Today the Zoo team has a quiz for you guys. So I'm really excited for you to take part. The event code for the Slido is RIVER, just RIVER, easy. Hopefully we all know how to spell that. Awesome. Without further ado, let me turn it back to Kat and Taylor at the Toronto Zoo. They are going to highlight, again, oceans, rivers, freshwater systems, why it's so important, and what you guys can do at home to help make sure that we keep our ecosystem happy and healthy. All right, Kat, thanks so much for joining us. Take us away.
All right. Thanks, Jesse, and hi, everyone. And I am Kat, and I'm here at the Toronto Zoo today in the Canadian domain. Right behind me is Weston Pond, which is full of lots of wildlife right now. We've got quite a few birds enjoying the water, trying to stay cool. We hear some green frogs, haven't seen them yet, and I expect that there will be some turtles out here as well. Like Jesse said, it is yesterday was World Oceans Day, and today is Canadian Rivers Day. So we're out here celebrating all of the water that's around us. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Great Lakes as well as some animals that we have in here. We will do a little fun activity to see what goes down the drain and what doesn't. And we'll wrap up talking about how we can protect the water that's around us. So the Great Lakes is right here where we are. The closest one to us is Lake Ontario. And the Great Lakes are the largest freshwater system in the world, with about 21% of the freshwater right here in the Great Lakes. They are super important. They've been around for about 14,000 years. They were created at the time of the last ice age. Basically, we had some big glaciers moving across the land, and as they moved, they dug big holes and they melted as the temperatures got warmer, and they filled these big holes with fresh water, and that's what the Great Lakes are today. They have about 23,000 cubic kilometers worth of water in them. So it's a lot of water, and we are so lucky to live where we do near these Great Lakes and have access to this fresh water. There's many people all around the world, as well as right here in Ontario, that don't have easy access to fresh water. So it's really important for us to protect the Great Lakes and any fresh water that's nearby. The average Canadian uses about 330 liters of water every single day. So if you can imagine 330 of those 1-liter water bottles that you go through every single day. And that usually goes towards things like showering, laundry, taking using just water for drinking as well as cleaning. So lots of those different ways that we're using water. And we want to be careful about how much water we use and about keeping that water clean. With that water, there's also things like hidden water that we don't really think about that go into making our everyday items. So something like a pair of jeans here, just these guys here, it takes about 12,000 liters of water to make 1 pair of jeans. So we're not really thinking about that, but 12,000 liters go into 1 pair of jeans, and that goes in towards actually growing the cotton. Cotton uses lots of water to grow. So if you are buying jeans that are high in cotton, a lot of that water is going to watering the cotton plants. It also goes towards the dyeing process to get all these cool shades and fades on our jeans. It takes some washing and dyeing to get them that color. So we have to the factories are pre-washing the jeans before they even get to us to get that nice dye. The jeans also just go through other manufacturing processes as well that bring it up to 12,000 liters. We also have things like cell phones And a cell phone, just any average cell phone, is going for about 8,000 liters of water to build one cell phone. Again, we're not putting 8,000 liters in here for us to carry around in our pocket. That would be pretty heavy. And we know our cell phones are very light and compact. But that 8,000 liters is going towards things, again, during the manufacturing process. It takes a lot of different parts to make all of our cell phones. And those machines, they're constantly running. They're constantly making new cell phones. So in order to keep a lot of this equipment cold and working properly, they're putting water around it to keep the machines cool so that they can keep making those cell phones for us without stopping the machines. Very important for us to have lots and lots of cell phones. Another thing that uses a lot of hidden water that luckily is usually something we buy less often than jeans and cell phones is a car. And a car takes about 216,000 liters of water to build. And again, it's going, the water is being used to keeping the machinery cold. So we're using all of that water to keep the machines cold. So again, we can keep pumping out those cars. And hopefully we're buying, a car every couple years, hopefully much longer than just every couple of years. But definitely we're buying less cars than cell phones or jeans. So we're good to use a little bit more water in that case, but still something that uses a lot of water that we're not really thinking about. And every time we use water, whether it's our own personal everyday use or to build these and manufacture these different products, we're putting pressure on our natural systems. So that's taking water out of these natural bodies of water that are then being used for us. And when we do that, there might be less water available to other animals and wildlife and plants as well who need this water. So it sometimes puts a lot of impact on our ecosystems. And we have lots of animals right here in the Great Lakes that this could be impacting. We have little guys like this. I think you may have seen our little red-side dace model in the past in another video. This guy here is super cool and 3D printed, and we just love it. And this, like I said, is a red-side dace. Dace is a kind of minnow. It's just a small fish and red on its side there. And these guys here, we don't actually have them on site at the zoo, but they do live right around the zoo. Their natural range does include the Greater Toronto area. And they really like little rivers. And they're pretty cool because, today I didn't wear my bug spray, but these guys are good because they like to eat bugs and they will actually jump up out of the water and eat things like mosquitoes. And many of us don't really love mosquitoes. So we want to make sure that these guys do have a safe home here in Toronto. And something that is impacting their homes is pollution. So pollution is entering the water, and these guys here, they like super clean water to survive. So when there's pollution in the water, these guys aren't likely going to call it their home anymore. They're going to go find somewhere that's cleaner. So we want to make sure that we keep their water clean so they can still hang out near us and eat those mosquitoes for us. A win-win for everybody. Next up, we have this guy here, who is an American eel. And this guy is, a roughly life size. So was the red-side dace. That was as big as it would ever get. This guy, our American eel, they are also someone who's impacted by our water use. And that is because American eels migrate. And that means they go on a long journey. They go from one place to another. American eels start their life in salt water out in the ocean. Then as they grow up, they'll swim into the fresh water, into our lakes and rivers. And then once they're ready to lay their eggs and to spawn and start their families, they'll return to that salt water. So when they have to go through all this movement, sometimes they are now finding barriers to their migration. And those are things like hydroelectric dams. So when they reach a hydroelectric dam, sometimes it's harder for them to get around. They can't get to where they need to go, and that causes problems for these poor guys. And we put these hydroelectric dams in to generate electricity for us humans. So it's something that really benefits us. It's kind of a green energy too, right? We're just using the power of water to get electricity, but it's causing problems for our friends who migrate, like these American eels, as well as our Atlantic salmon. Whoa, we got some action happening behind me. Little ducks swimming around. And with our eels, they are kind of lucky. There's something that they've got, a superpower that helps them actually get around dams, is they can breathe in water like a normal fish because they've got gills. But something really cool that American eels can do is they can breathe on land. And we know that most fish can't breathe on land. And to breathe on land, they do something really silly. What they do is they make lots of mucus, which is like boogers and snot, all over their skin. And they're able to use that slime that's on their skin to breathe on land. And they can stay outside of water for maybe about 12 hours, probably closer to 24 if it's raining and really wet outside. And they can sometimes use this time to move around a dam so that they're able to continue their migration. So super cool. But you know, another reason that we don't want to touch wild animals, right? You don't want to get covered in eel boogers. Next up, we have this little guy here, and some people think this is like a rock. It's pretty boring looking. What is this? This can't be alive. But this here is a freshwater mussel, and it is specifically called a purple warty back. I'm going to flip it around so you can see that purple on the inside and warty on the outside. So that's how it got its name. Pretty neat. And we have about 50 freshwater mussel species right here in Ontario, making us Canada's hotspot for freshwater mussels. And these freshwater mussels are super, super helpful to our ecosystems because mussels are what we call filter feeders. And what they do is they will open themselves up a little bit, take in some water, they'll pull out the good things they like to eat, which are things like bacteria, like E. coli, as well as algae. And they'll eat those little things up and they'll spit out the water, and it's cleaner than it was before they took it in. So they're like nature's little water treatment plant. And that's really good for us because humans generally don't like swimming when there's algae or bacteria in the water. So they're helping make the water even better for us. Unfortunately, they are facing an invasive species. These are like an alien that have come from somewhere else in the world, and they're causing problems to our friends, our freshwater mussels right here. And the species I'm talking about, the type of mussel I'm talking about, are zebra mussels. And they came over here accidentally from Russia, and now they are in our Great Lakes, and they are causing lots of problems. They are able to clean the water just like our freshwater mussel, our purple warty back right here. And they are cleaning the water so well that there's no good food left for our native freshwater mussels, which is causing problems. So we want to make sure that we're controlling those invasive species and making sure that we can get them out of the water so that our native freshwater mussels are able to clean the water for us. They've been doing it for years and years. The zebra mussels have only been here for a couple of decades now, but we want to make sure that we're keeping our native mussels happy and healthy. If you've never really seen a freshwater mussel before, or maybe you've seen them but you haven't known exactly what they are, we do have an app called Clam Counter. It's run through the zoo as well as Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And you can download that wherever you get your apps, and you can use it to help identify different mussels that you might be finding when you're out and about. And it can log this information for our scientists to then see where these mussels are and how we can better help them, because I think around 60% of our mussels here in Ontario are at risk. So they are an endangered species, like I said, because those zebra mussels are stealing all their food and all their habitat space. So we want to know where they are and how we can best help them. And, you know, you might also think of this just as a rock, right? It's not that exciting, but they are in a similar family to snails. So they have that hard outside. And if this guy was alive, you'd have like a squishy guy that's alive on the inside, kind of like a slug. So mussels are really interesting and really helpful for our ecosystems. So those are just 3 guys that we should be caring about right here in the Great Lakes who have issues that we need to consider when we use water. And we, like I said, we want to keep that water clean. We want to make sure that we're not using too much water. But now is time for the little fun activity that we've got, where I have this fun mystery bag, and we are going to go look at what's in the bag, and we're going to decide where things go. Does it go down the drain? Is it something that wouldn't cause problems in the natural environment? Or is it something that we should be putting elsewhere? So I don't know if Jesse wants to hop on and get us started here.
Well, so I'm so excited we have a mystery bag. It's like my favorite 2 words in the English language.
Wow.
Whoa, especially when we got that backdrop. So we're going to dive in. So for everyone on YouTube, if you're just on YouTube, great. You can answer these questions quickly, follow along with it. If you're on Slido, basically whatever Nicole pulls out of the bag, or whatever cat, sorry, we got a Nicole on the teachers, whatever cat pulls out of the bag, I'm getting tired. We are going to do that question on Slido. You guys can answer it there, yes or no. They're all yes or no questions. Let's get ready. Kat, I'm so excited. Let's do it.
Jesse, one quick question, because I'm just realizing now we didn't talk logistics. Is it all one poll or the individual polls?
They're individual polls. I did it.
Perfect. That's what I want to hear. We could have made it work either way, but that is good to hear. All right. So number one in the mystery bag is some toilet paper. Now we are going to answer on the poll whether we think toilet paper goes down the drain or not. We're going to start with an easy one, so hopefully this isn't too difficult. Something we do use every single day.
All right, we got 7 answers so far on Slido. No one's doing it on YouTube, but mostly yes. Most people are saying yes. We got a few no's, which is unexpected. I like it. We're tripping you up with toilet paper. I don't know where you put it, but
the answer is yes, right? Toilet paper does go down the drain. We use it every day. We know where it goes. There are exceptions though. Maybe those no's are people who use a septic tank. So sometimes things are a little bit different then. We want to be a little more careful about what goes down the septic tank. But yes, for an average person, toilet paper is going down the drain. No problem. Our next one we have here is some medicine. If you got a prescription or you found an old bottle of medicine, do you think that goes down the drain or does it go somewhere else?
Okay, let's see. Oh, 8 really fast. Everybody says no. Universal no for medicine.
Perfect. I know, in the past, maybe lots of people have been taking their old medicine, pouring it down the toilet and flushing it. But research is showing that every time we take medicine or put medicine down the toilet, it is able to go into our natural freshwater systems, which can affect our fish. So there's different kinds of medicine. They've said even things like coffee, when we drink coffee and have that caffeine, we go and we pee that out at the end, and that water, or with our pee in it now, can go right into the Great Lakes. And those fish can sometimes get those benefits of the caffeine as well, which is not so great because it can give them a little bit of stress, and we don't want our fish to be stressed out. Next up, we have baby wipes. Now this one's a little complicated, but let's see what people think.
Okay, baby wipes, dun dun dun. Drum roll, please. Bunch of no's on YouTube. Only 7 all no's. No one thinks baby wipes should go down the toilet.
That's what we like to hear, because sometimes these guys will say flushable on them, but you are absolutely not going to be flushing baby wipes or any other kind of wipe, even if it says right on it that is flushable. There are many cities all around the world right now who are having big issues with these baby wipes in their sewage systems that are just clogging their systems, and that is not good. Right? There's you might even find on YouTube people who put a baby wipe in a bottle of water and they shake it and see what happens, and it doesn't break down. Whereas you do that with toilet paper, shake the water bottle, it's totally broken down in a few seconds. So these do not break down, and they are really causing problems with our sewage systems all around the world. So we want to make sure if we use a baby wipe or any sort of hand wipe, it goes into the garbage. Now, next up, we've got some toothpaste. Where do we think toothpaste goes?
Let's see. People coming in. By the way, I love the interaction on YouTube. Like, you say something now, we get like 50 answers in like 2 seconds. So way to go, viewers from all over the place. Toothpaste, we got a mix for the first time in a while. So about 2/3 of the people think toothpaste yes, and a third say no.
So toothpaste is one of those things that is okay to put down the drain. Again, we're using it every day. There are definitely some toothpaste out there that are more natural, and maybe that's something you want to consider incorporating into your day. But for the most part, toothpaste is safe to go down the drain. Now, this guy here, one of my favorites to talk about is glitter. Where do we think glitter goes?
We're going to find out. Ooh, gold glitter. Is that your favorite color of glitter while we're waiting?
No, I like pink.
That's it. We've settled it. Unexpected queries in the zoo program. So nobody thinks glitter goes down the drain. Oh, one person does. Most people say no. One person's like, yep, let's put it all down there.
No is the right answer. This should not be going down the drain. Glitter is just teeny tiny pieces of plastic, which are now creating something called microplastics in our environment. which I think I talked about back during our day of action against litter. And these little pieces of plastic are sometimes small enough that they can go straight through our sewage system and into our natural bodies of water. So every time we're, doing some craft with glitter, we wash our hands, those little pieces can end up right into our bodies of water. And sometimes now fish actually mistaken this for food, and they sometimes are eating little pieces of plastic, which is not good for them or the rest of the ecosystem either. There are some companies who do use plastic-free glitter and things like bath bombs, because that's another big issue of people using plastic glitter in your bath bomb. You enjoy it, you take your cool photos in your lovely bath, and then you rinse that down the drain. But there are companies out there that use plastic-free glitter that are usually some sort of paper or rock, and those are much better alternatives than this plastic.
Nice. I like this one coming next. This is going to be interesting, I think.
Chemicals, right? So here we've got a bottle of nondescript chemicals. Where do we think that something like this goes?
I like the subtlety of the logo you put on the box thing of chemicals. Very, I was really expecting like a half and half split here, but no, with the big skull and crossbones, everybody says no.
We do not want to put chemicals down the drain. Sometimes you're finding chemicals in your cleaning products at home. So maybe it's worth looking at the ingredients of the different things you use to clean your home and make sure that you're buying things that are not going to harm the environment. This also is not just individuals, it also incorporates organizations and companies as well who may be dumping things that shouldn't be going in our natural bodies of water. And it's really important to hold everybody accountable. With many of these things, it's on us, right? We can make these little changes, but sometimes it's the bigger system that needs work as well. And then lastly, I've got a fun one just to end it off, which hopefully shouldn't be too hard. But here we've got some poo. Where do we think poo goes?
Everybody says yes, down the drain.
Right, we know this guy's using a fun little stress ball. But yes, poo goes down the drain. Again, something we do every day. It doesn't impact our natural bodies of water. Our systems are built to clean that out of our sewer systems before they get to our natural bodies of water. So that's all right. So that's the fun activity. I hope you guys all enjoyed that. But just to wrap things up, we're going to remember that there's lots that we can do in our everyday life to help make an impact on water conservation around the world, as well as right in our local areas. Something that's pretty easy for us to do is to take a shorter shower. Every time we use a shower, that's putting lots and lots of water down the drain. And a good time length to limit your shower to is about 7 minutes. So you can think about how long your own shower takes and think about getting it a little bit closer to that 7 minutes. If you're someone who likes a bath, well, you can try to have a shallower bath. So put a little bit less water in, that'll make a difference. As well as maybe you just have a bath once a week for a fancy spa day and take a quick shower the rest of the time. We also want to think about brushing our teeth to make sure we turn that tap off, and any other time as well, just don't leave that water running. Other things we can do is to make sure we have a full load of laundry or a full dishwasher if you have one of those at home, to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. Other things to consider is to possibly eat less meat and dairy. Both of those take a lot of water to grow to get them ready for us to be ready to eat them. As well as my final take-home message here is to possibly eat some more broccoli. Broccoli uses about 10 times less water to grow than asparagus. So if you're someone who likes to eat your vegetables or maybe doesn't like to eat your vegetables, I hate to break it to you, but broccoli is probably a better way to go to use a little bit less water and help protect the natural environments around us. So that's what I've got for you today. And Jesse, I'm ready to take some questions.
Fantastic. Well, Kat, thank you so much. That was a really, really fun and engaging game too on Slido and on YouTube. So thanks for that. For our questions, everyone on YouTube, just type in questions, start sharing questions. You don't need to tell us that poo goes down the drain anymore. We have established that firmly. Good job. So share some questions. We want to get as many as we can. We got some great ones from Slido. And before we dive in, I just wanted to list one more because I'm seeing it a lot around my neighborhood personally. Maybe you guys are too. If you guys have things like leaves or little bits of greenery on your driveway, you can sweep that down to the street or put it in a garbage bin. You don't need to use your hose to spend an hour, getting it down to the drain. So that saves a lot of water. Just do that if you get a chance. All right. I love this question to kick us off from Genevieve in Oshawa, and welcome back to Genevieve. Why is the ocean salt water?
Wow. I think it has a lot to do with the rock composition that's underneath the oceans. I think because they're much deeper, they're reaching different levels of minerals that are in those rocks. But I have never seriously considered this question, Genevieve. So I don't have an answer for you. And that might be something that we have to look to Google about. But that is a great question because there's so much more salt water on the earth. So what makes it so special that we have water that doesn't have salt as well? Especially when the fresh water is the water that we need the most as living things.
So I love this question because it's something that I've been asked too when I used to work at the zoo and the aquarium, and it stumped me when I heard it too. So the long story short is rivers and lakes ultimately flow to the ocean. So there's salts in them too, but they're just at much lower concentrations. Once they get to the ocean, they stay there. So all the salt that comes off all the land, all the salt that wells up from the bottom, that all combined in the ocean and has nowhere to go except to maybe form rocks. So you end up with a much saltier body of water than we get in our fresh bodies like rivers and lakes. So great question, Genevieve.
This shows that I can learn something today too.
See, look at that. That's what it's all about. Typing in the chat bar, we've had two teachers joining us live. So I'm going to go to Miss Kaufman first, joining us in Gorey, Ontario. So Miss Kaufman, if you want to come up with a question, go for it.
For sure. My question was based around the manufacturing process. When companies do that, do they reuse that water or are they wasting that water every time they make something?
It depends. Some companies will then use power to recool the water and reuse the same water over and over again. But there are sometimes they won't. Something that this often happens with is at nuclear power plants. And they will use the water to cool them and then put the water back into the lakes. So especially when they're putting these nuclear power plants right along the Great Lakes, they're generally putting this warmer water into the Great Lakes, and this can have some impacts on the environment as well. If these animals and wildlife are so used to having cooler water and all of a sudden there's some warmer water in there, they might find somewhere else to go.
Perfect. Great question, guys. All right. Miss Davy joining us in Smiths Falls, I can speak. Smiths Falls, Ontario. Come on up. I know you had to leave for a second, so I hope your audio is all good, but if you want to demute your microphone for us and come up with a question, go for it.
All right. One of my students would like you to explain the American eel again about its migration and when it does that. And the next question was, why do mussels eat bacteria?
So I'll bring out our American eel so we get another good look at him. But American eels, they will start their life in salt water. And then as they grow, they'll swim into that fresh water. They'll have access to different kinds of food, a different habitat for a while. And then they'll grow there. And then they'll swim back into the salt water to lay their eggs. And that does make them special as well, because not very many animals can move back and forth between salt water and fresh water. When you think about the times that maybe you've been to the ocean, right? That water gets in our eyes, the worst. The water gets in our mouth, the worst, right? Us humans, really only fresh water works for us. But these guys here, doesn't hurt their eyes. They don't mind drinking it. They don't mind being in the salt water or the fresh water. So it all works for them. And then the other question was about the freshwater mussels. And just because they are so small, they don't have the same body parts that we do. So they don't really have a proper mouth like us. And that makes it hard for them to eat things that us humans might eat or other animals might eat. So because these little pieces of bacteria and algae are so much smaller, they're able to take those in and eat those bits. And it's really cool that it doesn't bother them the way that eating E. coli would bother us for sure. Our digestive systems are just so different. And they're able to just take that water in, pull out the little bits through almost like a sieve, like when you're going to the beach and you shake out one of those little sieves to find different rocks or cool artifacts in the sand. That's kind of what they're doing. They're going through the water, pulling out the good bits, like those little pieces of algae and bacteria, and that's what they're using as fuel. They don't move very much, so they don't really need bigger fuel and bigger items of food to do a lot of high energy intensive things like us humans need.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kat. All right, we're going to take a few from Slido. We've been getting some great questions from some of our students that have been joining us for all our programs. So Andreas wants to know, what is our deepest of the Great Lakes? No pressure, Kat.
I believe that's Superior because it is our largest, and I think there's like a good chunk of all of the water in the Great Lakes is held just in Lake Superior. I don't know if it's like 50%. I'm just going to throw that out there. You might need to do some research on that, but it holds a good chunk of our water in the Great Lakes. That was on my bucket list to go see this year. I wanted to get up to Thunder Bay because I've never seen Lake Superior. So I am hoping that still might be able to do that by the end of the year.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly hope you can. I mean, travel with Ontario is pretty good, and we're slowly opening up. Cheers for phase 2. A quick note, because we got a question on Slido about this too. 20% of all the world's surface fresh water, so this is rivers and lakes, is in the Great Lakes. So it's a huge amount of water, and Superior is the biggest and deepest. Great question, Andreas. All right. Juliet wants to know from Oshawa. Hi, Juliet. Why can't we drink salt water?
So like I said before, our body just isn't built for it. We just need that fresh water. That's what works for us. If you've ever tried to drink salt water or maybe accidentally drank some in the ocean, our body just doesn't like that. And that has to do with the salt component because that's what makes us dehydrated. So when we drink salt water, or even when we eat salty foods, right? After you eat something that's really salty, like potato chips, you usually get pretty thirsty afterwards. And that's your body trying to make up for all that salt. So our body has a certain place that we want to be in terms of how much salt that we consume or how much salt we eat. And we want to stick with that. So if we started eating a lot more salty foods, you would definitely feel much more dehydrated and need to top off with more fresh water.
Very cool. Thanks, Kat. All right, we're going to go back to our live teacher. So Miss Kaufman, come on back up and go for it.
My question revolves around the rising water levels. So is that with the rising water levels, are those more beneficial to our aquatic life or is it more harmful to them?
So that's a good question. I think in general, it's hard for us to know because they are calling for higher water levels in some places and then lower water levels in others. But in general, I think the trend will be towards higher water levels as our glaciers continue to melt and increase the water volume in our oceans and other bodies of water. In theory, I guess it would seem like there would be more water for more animals to live. But I think what we're going to end up finding is that the impact on the carbon dioxide levels as well as water temperature will probably impact the water, like any benefits that having more water would have. So because we might be seeing rises in carbon dioxide in the water, and that limits the amount of oxygen that our aquatic animals could breathe, we might see a balancing off and we might not see an increase or a decrease at all.
With climate change questions like that, I always find it worth noting that there are certain species that are going to benefit from some of the things to do with climate change, but on the whole, ecosystems around the world are in real trouble. And this is because it's just changing too fast. Climate has always changed throughout the history of the world, the last 4 billion years of life, but it's changing so rapidly. So very few animals are able to adapt that quickly to deal with changing weather, changing more droughts, more floods, whatever that may be, new species coming into their habitat that couldn't be there before. So any benefit is as Kat said, likely to be outdone by a lot of the negative things that are happening. It's not a good scenario, but the benefit of programs like this is that it highlights so many ways that we can help at home and do stuff, and it really does make a huge difference. So great question. All right, Miss Davy, if you want to come back up again, just unmute your mic and we will take another question.
Okay, I have a question about the mussels. You said that there's several species that are native or natural to our area, but the zebra mussels are not. So is there something that we could be doing about the zebra mussels or to help with that situation?
Of course, right? And we always want to look for ways that we can help the environment. The zebra mussels, like I said, they came here accidentally on a cargo ship from Russia. And people didn't realize that they were on the ship. And when they went to empty some of the balancing water in the ship, they flew out and entered our Great Lakes through the St. Lawrence Seaway. And they are now a problem all around our Great Lakes. And we don't have a really solid management plan yet because they just spread super quickly. You saw how big the one mussel was. The zebra mussels, they're quite a bit smaller. So they can move a little bit better. They can get around very well. Another interesting thing about mussels, I'm going to backtrack for a second, is that to get around when they're babies, they don't have their shell yet. And part of their life cycle involves hitching a ride on the gills of fish and they'll hang on to the gills of the fish without hurting the fish. And when they find a nice new habitat that has lots of food and space for them to live, they'll drop off and then they'll start growing their shell. So that's how a lot of mussels can then spread so quickly around the Great Lakes. And right now we're just trying to stop people from spreading them more. And so one big thing you could do is if you are moving your boat from one place to another, taking it on your trailer out of the water to take it to another marina or dock or lake, you want to make sure that you really properly clean and disinfect your boat before moving it. These guys can be super small, especially when they're babies, so it's not always easy to catch them, and they can pretty easily sneak along for the ride. A really cool thing that they've done in British Columbia last year was a pilot project, is they've actually trained sniffer dogs to sniff for zebra mussels. So if you were going from Ontario to British Columbia to go out and do some ocean boating, and you had your boat on your trailer, as you cross through the border, they have the sniffer dogs who will come out and sniff your boat. And they're able to tell whether there's any little zebra mussels on there catching a ride. And then they're able to properly disinfect the boat before it enters British Columbia, because luckily British Columbia hasn't really felt it spread yet. And they are able to make sure they don't come in. So it's really, really neat that we have dogs that are able to do this for us. And just one more step that we can do to make sure that they don't get through all of Canada.
Nice. Great question, guys. All right. I want to take this one because I've never had it in any of our programs before. You might not have an answer. I don't actually. I've never heard an answer for this before. But is there some sort of safe alternative for pool chemicals? Like, can pool chemicals get into the lakes, rivers, and kill things? Presumably, yes. But is there something that we can use instead?
I don't know the answer to that either, Jesse. I think you just want to be careful about what you're putting in your pool for sure, because really anything that you end up pouring down the drain could have an effect on natural bodies of water. Similarly, right, you might have a saltwater pool, but we're finding that salt is also having its own issues in the Great Lakes, especially when we use things like road salt in the winter to get rid of ice or snow. When we spread out way too much of that, it ends up melting and going down our sewers and into our Great Lakes, which is now creating these freshwater systems with a whole lot of salt. And our friends like that little red side dace, like I said, they need super clean water, and even things like road salt in their rivers to make it a little bit harder for them to live, and they might find somewhere else and try and find somewhere with better ecosystem for them to live. And hopefully there still exists lots of space for them.
Yeah. Is it really, I love this topic, and it's a complicated topic because there's so many additives and materials and things in our lives that are so important to us right now that that are sort of part of everyone's everyday life. Sorry, distracted. Part of everyone's everyday life. And so it might be impossible to get rid of all of those things that are happening in your life or in and around you. But there's lots of ways that you can make little bits of difference to really change and do stuff for the good. So encourage you to do that when you can. And Kat shared a lot of that in today's presentation. Kat, is there any last message you want to share before we wrap up today?
Right, so like you said, Jesse, there's lots of different things that we can do. If we don't have the ability to make big changes with different products, we can always just go back to using less water, right? When we're washing our hands for those 20 seconds these days, we can turn off that tap while we're washing our hands and save that 20 seconds worth of water. So there's lots of little things we can do. It doesn't all have to be big and major, but again, every little small thing we do could lead to some really big impacts later.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for such a fun presentation. Ms. Kaufman, Ms. Davey, thanks for joining us for your awesome questions from your classes. Everyone on YouTube, we really appreciate it. And Kat, tomorrow we are doing this presentation in French, correct? Yeah, perfect. I'm so excited. It's going to be our first French presentation with the Toronto Zoo. So anyone who's tuning in at home, if you have French classes you work with, if you're bilingual, if you have students that want to join in, we'd love to have you there. Looking very forward to it at 11 a.m. Our last two programs of the Zoom coming up. I'm very I'm sad. This is it's been the end of an era here. But
we'll be back, right, Jesse? We'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll do more. It's going to be fun. Again, we've so appreciated it over the last 2 months, and for everyone tuning in. Again, Juliet, Genevieve, Andreas, all these groups have been coming in for every one of our Zoom programs. It's been so much fun. I'll do a bigger wrap up when we do this on Thursday. A little emotional, but for now, thanks so much again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you soon. A muskrat. Oh, we've got a muskrat live on screen. The little brown furry torpedo going through the algae.
You'll have to replay it back on YouTube later.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. So fast, too fast. That's awesome. Very cool. Awesome. All right. I'll let you guys go.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.